It's one of the most popular races of the sailing season, attracting everyone from seasoned pros to passionate Corinthian sailors. On the weekend, where celebrations are going on up and down the country, who will have their own cause for celebration and crack the Royal Ocean Racing Club's Myth of Malham?
It's an interesting race, the Myth of Malham.
It's interesting because it's a long race, it's a coastal race, and therefore there's always something to worry about on the navigation side of things.
It's a step into the first few days of what the Fastnet might look like if someone's aiming towards that.
It's quite early in the season, it's quite long, it's 230 miles, it's probably 2 nights at sea. It's got some really huge landmarks, Portland Bill being one of them, with a massive tidal race.
Whatever it gets thrown your way, you kind of have to deal with it.
If you make the wrong decision to go inshore as opposed to offshore, it can make or break your race.
It's a great moment when you finally get to Eddystone Lighthouse. Pretty majestic.
You kind of feel you've got to the top of the mountain and you turn the peak and turn the corner.
It's at the halfway point. It's time to take stock again and reboot.
If I could just say one thing to our competitors, it would be good luck, we're out to get them.
We'll see whether the weather gods and the tides land in our favour or not.
Well, we'll have a beer ready for you on the quay when you get back.
When I step on board, my entire focus is on what I have to do.
It's yacht racing. Anything can happen at sea.
It's one of the most popular races of the season, and this year 68 boats will race in 5 IRC classes, looking for the best corrected time to win overall. Crews of all sizes have come from Europe and America to the historic Royal Yacht Squadron line, all keen to pit their wits against the tides and unpredictable winds that shape this hugely technical 230-mile course. The route begins here in Cowes, making its way along the Solent, past the headlands of southwest England to the iconic Eddystone Lighthouse, 9 miles south of the Plymouth coast. There the yachts will turn and make their way to the finish line at Hurst Castle. Conditions are currently fantastic with a wind speed at 15 knots. Anticipated start for IC3 and 4 is just over 15 minutes away, with the rest of the classes expected to start at 10-minute intervals. Good afternoon and welcome to live coverage from the start of the Rourke Myth of Malham Race 2022. We'll be covering every angle of the start of this historic offshore battle live here from Cowes. Alongside me is double Olympic medalist and Volvo Ocean Race winning skipper Ian Walker, a sailor who is very familiar with the Myth of Malham. Ian, thanks for joining us. You've raced this course many times.
Well, thank you, Louis, and what a privilege to be here. On this day, and yes, I mean I've raced many times out to the west, but I have to say I've not very often had a downwind start.
Okay, that's a very good point. We've got a southeasterly blowing at the moment, and we've got fantastic conditions though, Ian. Let's be honest.
It's a perfect sailing day, absolutely perfect sailing day, and the tide is just turning as well, so they're going to have a fantastic run down the Solent, wind behind them, tide under them, and yeah, it's going to be a race to Portland Bill is the first step.
You sound like you want to be out there, Ian.
Well, I've got a little bit of envy going on, I have to say. I even said to my daughter as I came over this morning, I said, maybe we should do this double-handed one day.
Okay, well, there's one. I mean, that was a little segue into a lot of two-handed. We'll talk about those in a minute. But I tell you what, we have just a reminder that we've got a few previous winners that we'll be talking to later on in this race. We've got a few interviews we've got together. And we've also got, let's say it now, RAN 8, first race.
Yeah, what a wonderful boat. I've seen it actually out training a few times in the last couple of weeks. I mean, all the RAN boats are fantastic. The thing I noticed actually on the boat when I saw it out of the water in Hamble, I noticed how far back the mast is, so it'll be interesting to see the sail configuration.
Right, more on RAN later, Ian. Just a reminder, we are live. Do get in touch on Facebook and YouTube and let us know which boat you've got your eye on. We'll dive much more into the huge variety of boats, because one of the joys of the Myth of Malham is that any boat racing under IRC can win it.
Myth of Malham is probably one of my favourite events of the season. We managed to survive the horrendous weather and make it onto the top of the podium. Obviously, I've done thousands and thousands of miles now in all sorts of different conditions, and Myth of Malham was probably the heaviest weather I've actually sailed in, and it is that stark reminder that Mother Nature is there. And racing with my dad is well, we'd done that race together, and it was a very special moment for me.
From a personal perspective, as a navigator on a race like the Myth of Malham, is that it's longer than a short coastal race, if you like, and it's shorter than a big offshore. So it's actually very physically and mentally demanding because of the pandemic. We hadn't done a lot of sailing on the boat over the previous 2 years, so remind ourselves how to do it, if you like. It was very satisfying to go out and win it. There were a couple of very tricky elements to the race that we felt that we handled really well, and it set us on a good platform going forward.
We were doing the 2013, we did in Kerr 40, the boat to go for in 2013. No other frills on the boat, no floorboards, no table or anything like that, just a race boat. We were racing virtually the whole race against another boat just like us, called Madman. We both had a pretty reasonable exit from the Solent, and we were sort of virtually within sight of one another. But then she had a better angle of approach to the Eddystone, so she actually overtook us. And then we were sort of nip and tuck all the way back until the east of Portland Bill. We both had kites up, and for reasons which is difficult to explain sometimes, we were just faster. Like all races, the person who wins generally is the person who makes the least mistakes. You never sail a perfect race. The overall way of looking at doing well in a race is not to dwell on problems.
Well, some great advice there, Ian, and I've heard you say many times, he who makes the least mistakes often wins.
Well, that's very often the case, but you know, in an offshore race there's always a chance to just do something different, and that's what gives every boat in this race hope. And I think they'll all be sitting there right now thinking, what is the key moment going to be? So yes, we've got to keep the boat running at full speed as much of the race as we can, especially at night time where it gets tricky, but also, you know, where are the opportunities and how can we seize those opportunities?
And we can see some good interest here, and I think we can actually go out live to one of the boats. I'm just hearing from the live producer. Here we go live. This is Catherine on Ikigai. Hello Catherine, can you hear us? We can see Catherine, that's for sure.
Yes,
she's
I
on
can
the
do. How are you?
JPK 1080 Ikigai. Catherine, can you hear us?
Yep.
We've got a bit of a delay, I think, on this, Catherine. So
I can definitely
tell
hear
us,
you.
what's it like on board, Catherine? I'm going to have to be quiet because you're going to have to wait a while. I want to say she's pretty brave talking to us just before the start of the race.
Just setting up for the start. Lovely conditions. We have a fantastic crew on board.
I'm not sure we're picking up Catherine, unfortunately. Going for this, you've got Campbellfield on board. Well, it was worth a go there, but we're going to... let's go to the conditions for the race. Ian, talk to us about the wind conditions we're seeing right now. This is live.
Yeah, you can see on the graphic there we've got a southeasterly wind. It's probably a little bit breezier than that right now, sort of 12, maybe 12, 14 knots. and that's going to mean a downwind start. Not sure if the boat's going to have to jibe or not. They might be able to make all the way out of the Solent on port tack. That'll be fantastic, especially the boats with symmetrical spinnakers would be able to do that in maybe classes 3 and 4. So great downwind start, and then as we head out towards the west, we're expecting more wind offshore and less wind closer to the land.
Okay, and also tidal conditions, always important in a Solent start, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, the tide is king. The great thing about the tide, of course, is you know what it's going to do. Unlike the wind, we know that the tide is going to be under this, and for the fleet, the absolutely key thing is to try and get past Portland Bill on the first current. You can see in the graphic there, that's actually not right at start time. The tide is going to be it's going to be turning and going west, so they'll have the tide under them, and it's all about trying to make that first 60 miles to Portland Bill.
Gotcha. And we think at about 6 o'clock the lead boats are going to be getting around Portland Bill. What can you see on the tidal currents at that time?
Well, the graphic now is picking up the tide from the west, and I think that the tide is stronger typically in deeper water, but it compresses around all of the headlands. So, Anvil Point, Portland Bill, start point later on in the race. So the navigators will be thinking about, do I want to be going in to getting the compression of the current on the points, or do I want to stay further south maybe for more wind? And that'll be the kind of trade-off they'll be thinking about.
Okay, fascinating. And a game of three-dimensional chess, I believe. Hey, right now, we can, with less than 10 minutes to go to the start, we can go out and have a look at this beautiful Sparkman Stevens 34 morning after. Stuart Greenfield, what do you know about this boat, Ian? I'll help you out. We've got Mike Greville on board, the Royal Admiral as well, 4 of them. Fantastic to see this boat out there. And I tell you what, Stuart bought this boat 5 years ago, and he, because of COVID, couldn't touch the boat, couldn't get it, and he spent 18 months doing this boat up. And we spoke to Stuart Greenfield earlier.
Well, the Myth of Malham is a very traditional race of the Rourke, and I think we've been racing it for 30 or 40 years. It's a good test of crew, especially on a Fastnet year. It's 250 miles. It's going to take over 2 days for a little boat like ours, and it's generally windward leeward, which for me is really good news because this boat is very good downwind. Well, the key challenge is always Portland Bill and what happens at Portland, because in a small boat we're normally unlikely to get there before the tide has turned. So we have to make a decision on whether we go out into the channel, or we have to make another decision, which is to go right in close to the bill, and I'm talking literally 50 to 100 meters off. This boat was number 2 SNS 34, built in 1968, and was owned by Rodney Hill, who was a very well-known Rourke member when he was alive. He had a brilliant racing career, and he raced against Morning Cloud, which was an SNS 34, which was owned by Edward Heath. And he was a member of the Southern Cross team in 1968, and this boat went down to Sydney with Morning Cloud and raced the Sydney Hobart. Morning Cloud won that race, and that's history, and this boat came 3rd. And the final owner, before I bought it, left it in a boatyard for 22 years without touching it. So when I finally found it under some corrugated iron, the boat needed to be completely rebuilt. We moved it to a barn in the middle of the Isle of Wight, so I just knuckled down and started working on it, and 8 months later we finished the project. I did have some help, by the way, but it didn't come until after COVID. So we launched her last year, and last year she won Classic Boat of the Year. SNS 34 comes back, very, very good boat.
Okay, so we are now into the starting sequence for the Myth of Malham race. First start planned for 1300 for IRC classes 3 and 4, and there'll be further starts scheduled every 10 minutes is the intention. IRC 2 at 1310 and the big yachts at 1320. For those of you who want to stay tuned in as the race unfolds, all boats are using trackers. So we've got AIS data coming from all the boats. The position and ranking will be continually updated and can be viewed via the free YB Tracker player. You can scan the QR code that you can see on the screen right now, or you can head to rorke.org to access it. There's also a YB app for the Myth of Malham race, available free to download on all smart devices, and this is a way that people at home can follow the race, Ian, isn't it, from the armchair?
Yeah, that's right. And of course, the competitors might be wanting to look at the tracker as well to see what wind other boats have got during the racing. Of course, that's available to all, so they're able to do that.
Okay. Right, so we are right into the sequence here. We just heard a gun go off. I think that was 4 minutes to the start. Ian, what can you see out on the water?
Yeah, so we talked about the southeasterly wind, so they're going to be downwind, so the crews are going to have to get the spinnakers up as quick as possible after the start. Some might be brave enough to get it up before the start, but of course the absolutely critical thing is don't be over the line, because of course the tide is pushing you over the line, and if you're over the line, you're going to have to take that spinnaker down, turn the boat around, going back against the tide, and it could be as bad as all over if you're not careful. So not a race where you want to be pushing the start line too hard. Okay, and what a cracking sight this is to see after 2.5 years of disruption, to see everybody out there doing what they love. Yeah, and it looks like most of the boats are well back from the line. It's interesting that I always think there's two approaches to this. You stay back from the line to know that you can get the spinnaker up and not be over. The other option, of course, is to really hover near the line, just accept you'll be later on your hoist, but know that you're closer to the line. So it'll be interesting to see which option some of these boats take. Yeah, downwind start is a little bit unusual, particularly for these type of boats, isn't it? Well, it's certainly unusual here because normally have a prevailing westerly wind. So it's not something that they'll be that familiar with. There's a lot of set plays you make going down the Western Solent, and that might all look a little bit different with the boat sailing downwind. Yeah, I can see. We're going to talk about Rocket later on. There's Jelenko as well, seeing on screen. Beautiful sunshine here, and as Ian said, the tide has now fully turned. So the water's gone a little bit flatter. We've got the wind going in the same direction as the tide. And with just coming up to 2 minutes to go, we're not seeing too many boats near the line here. And as you pointed out, they don't want to be over. It's a long way back, isn't it? Yeah, it's of course we've got the three classes, so many of the boats way back were a little bit longer to their start. There'll be a few nerves out there. In any offshore race, you want to put on a good show and make a good start, but in the back of your mind you're thinking, this is a long race, we don't need to do anything stupid. So the last thing you want to do is rush a manoeuvre, break something, or have a collision with another boat, and it's especially difficult in the second start we're going to see today, where there's a lot of double-handed entries. Yeah, for sure. So that's coming up to, it's just over 1 minute 30 to go. IRC 3 and 4 will start. There are 19 starters here, and we've got 12 different designs amongst these starters, and just about everybody out there. Well, Ian says everybody loves it, but these people really do. We've got 1 minute to go to the start, and at the moment we don't have too many boats near the line. It looks like, as you say, Ian, it's better to be conservative. What a collection of boats we've got in this start. We've got everything from a Swan 44 to the smaller boats, but Ian, what do you see? Well, we've got the run at the line. You see some brave people got the spinnakers up already. They've even stopped the red funnel ferry you could see in the image a second ago, because the boats now are making a full charge at the line. About 40 seconds to go. Okay, so we're picking up a few people who are doing their own filming down on the dock at the moment, but we've got 1 minute to go. As you say, a few spinnakers are popping for the start of the Myth of Malham. This is a 230-mile yacht race, if you've just tuned in, organised by the Rolex Racing Club. And we've got 10 seconds to go in. And I'm looking at the leading boats at the moment. We're trying to pick them out. And we've got two guns. That's an X-ray over the line. I think it might have been the boat at the far end of the line.
Okay. This is a very long line, Ian. It must be, what, 2 miles long, maybe more?
Yeah, the race committee clearly got better eyes than I have, but most of the boats, you can see they've set themselves up pretty near to the island because the current is stronger near the island side. A bit of a tangle there on the boat nearest to us, but all of these boats have set themselves up to be in the maximum current as they head west down out of the Solent.
Yes, indeed, and we've just seen the X-ray flag has come back down, so that means that the boat that they called over has successfully restarted correctly. And as I said, it's quite difficult to pick them all out, but Ian, you've got something.
It's Purple Mist there, who made a great start, but they've got a right pickle on the spinnaker. You see them there trying to untangle it. Can't see, we often call that a wine glass in the spinnaker, but it's coming out now. See the crew there pulling it up at the mast, 4867. So, even with that little tangle, they're still in great shape because of such a wonderful start closest to the line at the island end of the line.
Yeah, one of the two-handed teams here. And who else have you got there, Ian?
Well, it's just an interesting. There we got Jangada on starboard tack. They've opted to start with right of way on starboard, but the port tack boats using the angle of the line to cross clear ahead of them.
There we go. Overall leader for the Rourke season at the moment, Richard Palmer, racing two-handed with Rupert Holmes. And the big play for them this season, apart from trying to win the Rourke Seasons Points Championship, is the 7-star Round Britain and Ireland race in August. And as Ian pointed out there, an interesting start there from Jangada. We're picking up a few more boats here, Ian.
I think it's Wee Bear there to windward. They make a nice start. They got clear air. They're the windward boat now. They've rolled over Purple Mist. And the boat that on starboard tack, of course, they're heading out. They're now going to have to jibe. It's a bit of a toss-up as to whether you want to stay near the island with more current, but knowing you're going to have to jibe back out at some point.
Yeah. Sun cosy there. Is there sort of an element of relief here when you finally actually get away and the gas bill disappears and all that stresses and strains back home in the office or something?
There's always a relief every time you untie for the dock and get out to sea. But certainly there'll be some relief on board those leading three boats. They've made a really nice job. And that really sets them up now. And looking at their angle, it looks like they're going to be able to make it most of the way down the Solent without jibing. So, not too stressful a start relative to what we might normally expect.
Yeah, but it's an unusual situation to be in close quarters with the kites up, moving down the Solent. As you say, it's a nice angle down the Solent. And just looking further down into the Solent, we're going to get stronger tide in. Is that correct in the Western Solent?
It'll build, and of course it's only just turned, so it'll build over time, and it will build on all of the ledges close to the island side, and of course then the maximum current as you head off out past Yarmouth and past Hurst Castle and sort of get spat out into the English Channel or Christchurch Bay, and when you've got to start thinking about, okay, what's the big picture here? Do we want to head north or south? Really surprised at the boats on starboard tack. I don't think there's any reason to be spending any time on starboard tack. I think that was a mistake by those boats, but as you can see, the leaders there on port, they're soaking pretty low. And the boat on the right there's got a spinnaker pole that they can square back and sail lower, and that will help them to not have to jibe. The yellow spinnaker just flapping a bit. I think that's Wee Bear, because they're trying to sail low so they don't get sucked up under the island side.
Yeah, another two-handed team, Wee Bear. It's a projection 920, and that's sailed by Nick Lee and Edward Bayliss, getting a great start. And it looks like quite a square downwind. Would you say that's going to suit the symmetrical boats in?
Well, I mean, it's not a dead run. Looking at it, it's kind of halfway between the two. They're not having to jibe, but it's not hot and really suiting the asymmetric boat. So I think it's pretty fair. And as they get out of the Solent, the wind is forecast to back a bit, and then that will become more of a dead run, and that might suit the symmetrical boats a little bit more.
Yeah. And there's a nice little battle going on in this start between four J109s. We saw Rob Cottrell's Mojo Rising a little bit earlier on, and we've got two armed formaces. I'll just put my teeth back in there. Service clubs. We've got the Royal Armoured Corps Yacht Club. That's White Knight 7. And we've also got the Royal Navy Sailing Association, Jolly Jack Tar. Ian, what are you spotting down there for the drone? Or
well, there's a great aerial image there, and you could see that the boats pretty much are, they're having to soak low. You can see the yellow spinnaker on the left. They don't want to get too close to the island side, so it's wider than a perfect angle for an asymmetric boat, but they're pretty much able to sail straight down the western Solent. Haven't seen the Armed Forces boat yet. I know it's got red underneath, so we might be able to pick that up a bit clearer later on. There's a Royal Navy boat there on the right hand side of the screen.
Okay, wonderful.
What a great sight now as well, with all the spinnakers up. Real test of crew work.
Ian, we've got a hot two-handed team racing this year on Sunfast 3300 Rocket, the dynamic duo Shirley Robertson and Dia Kafari. Here's what they had to say before the race.
The Myth of Malham is a great challenge. It's quite early in the season. It's quite long. It's 230 miles. It's probably 2 nights at sea. So you're starting to get more of an offshore feel. You get more into a rhythm of offshore sailing. We've had a massive opportunity presented to us by Nigel Colley at Sea Ventures to come together with a new 3300. So these races like the Myth of Malham are all stepping stones on this big journey. But it's really nice for me to sail with somebody with a completely different background to mine, so that we can draw on each other's skills, learn from each other, collaborate and bring the best out of each other. It's quite a long, short race. It's over 200 miles. So you have to start to manage yourselves quite well. Think you're going to have to rest at some point. You're going to have to, make sure that you're hydrated and well fed. Not only are you worried about coming out of the Solent, but you've got these dominant headlands along the way. And you get there at the halfway mark, you turn around, you've got to do it all again in reverse. So it really does test you right from beginning to end. It's a great moment when you finally get to Eddystone Lighthouse. We've been talking about it probably for a day and a half, and then finally you are there. It's pretty majestic. Normally you're there sort of early in the morning, and it just sort of rises out of the sea.
Ian, you know Shirley and Dee really well. What do you think about this new partnership?
Yeah, Shirley I know very, very well, having coached and raced with her a lot, and Dee I've raced with a few times. I think they've had the boat on the water quite late, so there's a lot of expectation, clearly two great sailors. But I sort of feel for them a bit, because they've got this expectation and they haven't had the time in the boat they need. It's a new partnership, that takes a while to sort out all the bits. So I think it's a real test for them, and you're just dividing the responsibilities in that two-handed thing. It is in itself quite a challenge, and that takes quite a while to get used to.
Yeah, they've been looking a bit starry-eyed. I've seen a couple of them. I think they're enjoying it. I think they are.
No, they get on well. I've spoken to Shirley actually in the last couple of weeks. She's excited about it, and she'll be feeling nervous right now, because of course Shirley's there for her excellence in small boat racing. She'll be expected to nail the start, and of course Dee's the offshore, and she'll be the one to come to the fore maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wonderful. Well, we've just had the Red Funnel Ferry go through, and the Red Jet's just behind it, but we are now going to have a little chat about Fujitsu British Soldier. That's the Army Sailing Association Sunfast 3600, and this team, the Army Sailing Association, has a long history with the Myth of Malham race, dating back to I don't know, the 19 whatever it was is, but anyway, we've got 1 minute to the start of IRC2 for this race, and good to see British Soldier out. Later in the season, in August, they will be competing in the 7-star round Britain and Ireland race, which will start from this line. And right in shot now, we've got Sailplane, the Mat 12. Which is a cracking boat. They race this boat inshore and offshore. And for the now, Rob Bottomley is also sailing the boat with, I'm trying to remember his name. He'll kill me for this, but it's a French gentleman that sails it with him. And there's Rocket. Oh, I tell you what, we really want these two to do well. And as I said, a bit starry-eyed, but we're right into the start. Ian, talk us through what's going on. 20 seconds to go, roughly.
Well, as we said, Shirley's there to nail the start, and I'm assuming that Shirley's at the helm, but the two of them as well. Spinnaker, great boat handling, and of course there they go, leading off the line. Spinnaker up bang on time. I think Dennis Connor would have been proud of that one.
I think Shirley was over in the Fastnet start, the Rolex Fastnet Race start, so she was brave to do that. Andy, I must say, right on their tail, this Fujitsu British Soldier, probably stealing a bit of their wind in, or maybe just a bit high. But what a start there. Let's talk about Rocket. They're definitely getting some wind damage from behind there, though, Ian, aren't they?
Yeah, well, it looks like the sheet just came off, actually. They were all set, charging along, and looks like they just lost the sheet. But they've recovered it now, and they're still to windward of all the other boats. So the advantage of starting there is that they'll have maximum current. The disadvantage is they've got to sail a bit lower. If you look at your top of your screen, there's two other boats, the White Kite and the pink one. I'm not sure who it is. You can see they've got a tighter angle, so they'll have a better angle to the wind and more wind, more speed as a result, but maybe less current underneath them. But interesting difference in tactic, and looks quite promising for them.
Yeah, they've got the Hod 35 Malice there in the foreground there, GBR 979.
Yeah,
and Tigris there as well, the Sunfast 3600 in.
Yeah, Malice have made the opposite end of the extreme, too close to the island, having to really soak to get down, and are paying the price slightly. So do different extremes from the two ends of the line. Okay.
Yeah, interesting stuff, and a lovely aerial shot there of Rocket, and they look a little bit, I would call that lower, Ian, but you're probably going to cry. They just came up just as I said it. But fantastic conditions here for the start of the Myth of Malham race, and you're watching IRC2 as they stream down the Solent. There's Mungu. Ian, what you got?
Well, I think what's interesting to me is a lot of these boats are double-handed, and yet there's been really efficient spinnaker work. So real credit to all of the crews. Everyone got their spinnaker set pretty quick, and of course that's hard enough with a full crew. But when there's only two of you, there's a bit of training involved in that.
Yeah, and a spinnaker's hard to handle. On a type of boat I've raced on, you need about 10, 11 people. There's only two of them on board, so if the gear goes wrong with the spinnaker up, there's only two of you. It's pretty hard to sort out, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean any mistakes are punished hard with two of you. But I think what they'll be pleased about is they're not a whole load of tacking and jibing at the start of this race. So at least they can settle down. They're kind of pointing down the rum line towards Hurst Castle. And now they'll be getting settled. Of course, with two of you, you've got to think really hard about how you allocate your resources in terms of effort. It could be a 2-day race. I liked Shirley's expression when she said it's a short, long race, because it's sort of what it is. It's not long enough to be long, and it's not short enough to be short. So you've got to really manage yourselves. There's Go Wellness as well. They look like they're having to soak, which is why their spinnaker's not quite filling.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we're going to have a little focus here on one of the French boats racing. We've got Pincher, and the Royal races always attract top sailors from across the world, and from Société de Régate de Havre, the oldest yacht club in France, Pincher is proven Royal champion, including winning the Myth of Malham. We caught up with skipper Gilles Fournier.
When I started in 2015 and 16, I had the impression that winning was much easier than it is today. More people racing and much more competitive racing. Competition is, of course, what we are looking for. We like to have a chance to win, but not to win easily. Down Trader would be a nice opponent. I would be glad to compete against them this year, and if they win, I will applaud. We have a very different crew than usual. We are sailing with 5 people, normally we are 8. We have 2 young, talented British sailors sailing with us. We have a difficulty against more modern boats surfing. We don't surf as much as they do, and that can be a problem, but globally we are very satisfied with Pintia. It's a very nice boat. It seems not too tricky for tomorrow. We probably will go downwind quite easily to the rock. Sailing back to Cowes will be the interesting part of the race. The good thing about offshore sailing is the possibility to mix people, to have various ages in the crew, so you can keep competing in spite of being older. It's a wonderful sport.
Great to see Gilles Fournier there, and I know he's got some young crew on board that boat. We'll talk about that in a minute, Ian, but also young crew on board the brand new RAN, Nicholas Zenstrom's 52-foot offshore machine. And on that crew, they've got some people you know very well. Tell us what Justin Slattery's like.
Everybody needs a Justin. Yeah, well, I've sailed 3 times around the world with Justin Slattery, and I wouldn't want to go around the world without him. So yeah, no, he's got all the experience, and he'll be there to try and make sure all the sails go up and down. You know, everything stays in one piece. He fixes anything, and you know they've got a celebrity crew, wonderful new boat, and everybody's looking forward to seeing how it performs.
Yeah, and you were talking about this interesting rig setup, where the rig and the keel aren't aligned. Why would you do something like that?
Yeah, well, I saw the boat in the yard in Hamble last week, and it was noticeable how far back the mast is. You can see it a little bit in that shot. You know, the keel is actually forward of the mast, and I think that is because of the size of the headsails and the spinnakers. And we'll probably get a sight of, well, we will get a sight, I'm sure, of the spinnaker as they head out of the start. So that'll be interesting. It looks like the wind has picked up a little bit there over towards the North Shore, and you had a good shot of the Volvo 70 as well there in the background.
And there we've got a great shot of James Neville, the Royal Commodore's Eno XXX, the HH42, and they've had a cracking start to the season. Got some interesting flying head sails on that boat as well, Ian.
Yeah, I've raced against this boat a number of times this year in shorter forms of the racing, in the 40-foot class, and I think it's really optimised for these offshore races. Done very well offshore, and as you say, it's renowned for being fast downwind. Although this race looks like it's going to generally be quite light as we get into it, so maybe they won't really get the chance to demonstrate that.
Yeah, and another boat that's more than experimented with these reaching sails is Dartwood, Michael O'Donnell's boat, and he's got a really strong Irish crew on that boat, including past Royal Commodore Michael Boyd. Well done, Michael, for being out there. And also we've got Kenny Rumble on board, and I could go on. They've got a host of top Irishmen, and I don't know whether we're going to be able to shoot out and talk to. No, we're not going to be able to shoot. We were trying to talk to Michael O'Donnell on board. But no lives on that. But Dartwood, they've also changed the ballast, put some sails up. This boat has water ballast. There's only 6 on board, Ian. Talk to me about that.
Well, one of the advantages of having fewer crew is, of course, you save weight, but you have less weight on the side to give you righting moments. So you make up for that with some water ballast. The great thing about the water is you can get rid of it when you don't need it in light winds or downwind. So obviously the handicap will take that into account, but it's a nice way of being able to keep a boat competitive and yet sail with fewer people, which a lot of people like to do because everybody's busier, and it's something that the modern boats are well suited to, like all the rising the double-handed boats.
And now that is Telefonica Black. It's a Volvo 70, Ian. I really wouldn't be sarcastic enough to say, do you know what a Volvo 70 is? You've done about 50,000 racing miles in it. God knows how many with the training as well.
Yeah, no, I've, as you say,
a minute to go to the start here.
Great boats, and I've sailed around the world against that boat. It's a very fast boat, Telefonica Black, but of course this feels like a long race. This is a short race for that boat, and of course quite a light race as well. That's designed for heavy air, big oceans, so could be a tricky one for them in the light airs that we've got forecast.
Yeah, we a little shot of Dartwood there, getting their kite ready. And talking to kites, I think we could just see the Class 40 kite behind it. So we are right into 30 seconds to go till the start. Ian, talk me through this start, IRC2.
Well, they're pushing the line a little bit harder than the other fleets. Certainly, that one boat out the front. You can't see it on your screens, but there's somebody really pushing the line.
Yeah,
looks like they might be earlier. They're starting to panic.
White kite is the one you're referring to.
There we go. The white kite. You see, they're flapping the kite now because it looks like they might be early. 5 seconds to go. I think they are going to be early.
Okay.
The red Spinnaker.
Not too sure who that was getting a flying top. As you say, the kite's all over the place. Ian's going to have a look through the binoculars. And we're just about picking them up here. We've got GBR 3906 is that red kite, but not the one further out who's
Yeah, so
now
that's
got
Xanadu. Xanadu is over. They always looked a little bit bullish.
Okay, that's the 39 footer. The 39 footer. It's over there. But anyway, looks like Eno's really got a mojo on. We've got her on shot now, pulling away nicely.
She's got a nice puff as well. She's right on the island side. I think in the long run she will have started a bit too near the island. You can see she's going to have to jibe back out. The really best start for me was the red Spinnaker, slightly further to the north. You can see there the penalty, having to get Xanadu now having to work their way back up against the current, remember, as well as taking the Spinnaker down. I'm not sure the crew will be thanking the tactician or helmsman too much for that one.
Meters, Eno's ahead of them by now, and they haven't even gone through the line yet. So as you were saying, so important not to be over on this start. And there we've got Michael O'Donnell on Dartwood, and we're just seeing what you got in there, Ian. It looks like a little jibe action going on there with Eno.
Yeah, Eno have had to jibe, so they've just jibed from port onto starboard, so they'll have right away as they come away from the island.
Okay.
So the question is, will the boats who started further offshore be able to cross them?
Yeah, just had Bulldog pop up there as well. That's the J122 Bulldog. Pretty sure it is. Looked like a Bulldog on the Spinnaker. Maybe they're trying to fool me in. Maybe
I'm just checking here that we haven't done a disservice to Xanadu, because I'm just checking the number. I thought 390X might actually be the red Spinnaker who made the wonderful start. They'll never forgive me.
Yeah, you will. And I think he's rates his illusions. You know how competitive that lot are. Lovely aerial shot here, Ian. Are you seeing anything different to the last start?
No, I think it all looks pretty similar, and I think, as you can see, the advantage is to the boats starting further north who are now crossing the white Spinnakers on starboard tack, heading back. There's one now just jibing back onto port. I think that might be Eno. So yeah, looking, the best starts seem to be over on the up to the north, and you can see Ran in the in one of the boats furthest north is really starting to stretch her legs now.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic sight. I mean, the boats are doing quite a pace here, but Ian, this is the start of a 230-mile yacht race. And I remember you told me when you were doing this race, you'd like to finish it as energetically as you started it. What do you mean by that?
Well, the question is, what's the most important mile, the first mile or the last mile? You're only as good as your last mile. So yeah, it's in all offshore racing, you've got to manage your effort, and that sometimes means there's key parts of the race. So now, in this particular race, the race right now is to Portland Bill. You've got to get around Portland Bill before the current turns against you. If you don't, you could be stuck there for 6 hours.
Yes.
So it is worth putting everything into the first section of the race. Then you maybe can conserve some little bit of effort. We know we're going to have some light winds overnight. You can maybe save some energy, and then it's going to be hard at the end as they've got to make their way back upwind towards the finish.
Yeah.
Definitely was. I'm going to have to put an apology in, because I think it was Xanadu who made a great start.
All right.
I'm just trying to work out who it was that was over.
Ian, thank you very much. We don't want to end with an apology, Ian, but thank you so much for joining us here for the for the Myth of Malham start. Just give us some final words, Ian.
Well, I think privileged to be here. Great start. I've learned a little bit. I'll be ready for the next downwind start in the southeasterly wind. And, just wish everybody well. It doesn't matter whether you win these races. It's all about taking part, the camaraderie, and, the most important thing is to keep it safe and bring everybody back in one piece.
Yeah, safety always paramount. Ian, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ian, for all your thoughts and insights today. And this is the start of the Myth of Malham, but of course Racing with the Rourke goes on all year round. And the standout races for 2022, let's talk about Cowes Dinar St Malo, the brand new Rochier Baltic Sea Race, the Cherbourg Race, which this year will be part of the IRC Double-Handed Nationals, and of course There isn't a race like it, the 7-star Round Britain and Ireland race. Don't go anywhere.
Well, this 7-star Round Britain and Ireland race is 3 times as long as the Fastnet Race, so it's 1,800 miles. At this time of the year, the weather can throw anything at you, and really it's a very tough race, and it's one that only experienced people are doing.
It is a tremendous test of sailors. I mean, the reason why it's so attractive is because it is tough. If it was easy, no one would have anything to boast about afterwards, would they?
We're racing against time, we're racing against ourselves, keep the upside up and the downside down.
We're going so fast, we're at the top of Scotland already, only 140 miles from Muckaplugger, and we're really only just...
It's just relentless, the water coming over the deck. And even down below the boat's really wet as well, so there's no escape. And then you're wet on the inside, you're wet on the outside, everything's wet.
Well, to wrap up coverage of the Rolex Myth of Malham race, we've got the Rolex CEO, Jeremy Wilton, with us. Jeremy, talk us through the start of that race.
Well, it was great, Lou, and I thank you and Ian for your commentary and the way you visualised the whole race with the pictures for everyone watching. It was a great start. We were blessed with great weather and a great breeze, and we had the tide with us for a westerly start. And as you saw, we had different elements on the 3 different starts. And the one thing which is great about the Rourke offshore race season is that it's the breadth of boats we get. You know, you saw from the two-handed start we had, whereabouts we've got about, I think it's nearly half the fleet of 68 is two-handed. And then we go up to the Telefonica Black at 70 foot. So we've got 30 foot to 70 foot and a whole breadth. And what supports all that is our rating system, IRC. And IRC is the best rating system for bringing a breadth of boats together, so they can all race competitively over corrected time.
And what a Rourke 2022 season!
Yeah, it's been a great season, and what a lot of viewers may not realise is that our season starts back in January. Oh, actually, no, I suppose that the season points championship starts back in October with the Middle Sea race over in Malta. We then move to the transatlantic race in January, which goes from Lanzarote across to Grenada, and then that's followed by the Caribbean 600, which is the biggest offshore race in the Caribbean. 600 miles, starts and finishes around Antigua. From Antigua, goes around 11 different islands, and is a great offshore experience. And I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of boat owners and a lot of American owners, and they absolutely love the event. And then we go from that sort of international aspect and the warmth of the winter in those races into our domestic season. As you mentioned in your commentary there, we've had 3 offshore races already. We've now got the Myth of Malham. Then we go into a few more of our domestic races. Then we've got the Round Britain and Ireland, or the 7-star Round Britain and Ireland, as I should say. And then previous to that, we've got our new Rossignol Baltic Sea race in and out of Helsinki, which we think is going to be a great addition to our portfolio of racing.
Yeah, and just summing up, what's it like to have everybody back in action after the terrible couple of years we've had?
Well, I think it's great, and when you talk to all the competitors and you talk to the owners, there's great enthusiasm because of the whole issue around COVID and the way that those regulations affected offshore sailing, because you weren't allowed to have people in a confined space. and now the shackles are off and everyone's able to get out there and race again, there's a lot of enthusiasm, and that's translated into the IRC part of our business as well, whereabouts you look at the number of people who are looking for certificates so they can come racing. That's on the up, and that's getting back towards 2019 figures, way up on 2020. And as you've seen in our numbers, Louay, and as you know so well, we've got a lot more boats racing from the end of 2020, and it's getting back towards 2019. We need to do more. We want to get more people out there racing, and we need to get a broader cross section of people out there racing. So we as a club, we as the old Royal Ocean Racing Club, we've got a lot of work to do in trying to help invigorate that and get more people back on the water.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, for that insight. And just a reminder that the tracker is still running, although we're about to say cheerio. The tracker's still running, and you can follow the Rourke Myth of Malham race via the YB app on all smartphones and tablets. And if you can't find that, you can get the QR code, which is on the screen right now. Just take a picture of that, and follow this race. It's going to be going on for a few days, and what can I say? But it's goodbye from the Rourke Myth of Malham.